What is going on, folks? Welcome to the 2026 NBA Trade Deadline Show here on the No Ceilings NBA feed. We got a big show today, folks. I mean, we have 15 minutes until deadline has passed. The playoff race has shifted. Rebuilds have been sped up. Draft boards got shaken up. Triple J gets traded for 3 picks. DC accelerates their rebuild. A former MVP, maybe he shifts the balance of power in the East. Who knows? All that and more coming up next. Welcome to the No Ceilings NBA show. Folks, my name is Corey Tullaba, your host, alongside Nathan Grubel. Nathan, I got my shades on for Tyler Rucker, making some jokes about my sunglasses in our promo tweet. So I got you rocking the shades because, my goodness, these trades really shined a light on the new NBA we are going to witness. So, Nathan, how we doing today? How you feeling about all of the madness that has transpired so far, for this deadline?
I got to be honest, Corey, I did not have on my bingo card today that the 2 biggest moves at the trade deadline would be made by 2 teams that are in the middle of the lottery race to try and get one of those top 3 picks in the 2026 NBA draft. Did not have that on my bingo card. And yet, we know in the NBA, as we saw last year with the Luka Doncic trade in the middle of the night, anything can happen at any time. Any team can pivot and change course. We're actually seeing that in real time with what the Clippers have done today, really over the last few days with the James Harden and Darius Garland swap. So it's been full of surprises, Corey, but that's what makes it fun, right? That's why the NBA is arguably the best league in the world. It's completely keeping you on your toes. Surprises abound. But I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm glad to have a podcast studio back. Corey, I haven't been able to record a podcast in weeks. I literally haven't been able to in my house. So I'm excited to finally be back on the mic with you, bud.
Yeah, man. I much appreciated that you stopped by and we get to hang out. And, I mean, this is a little different for us. We're talking a lot of NBA. I mean, there are certainly draft implications. I mean, let's get started on some of the deals that have already transpired. We'll start with the big one here. Jaren Jackson, I think that was the one that kind of ignited everything, the catalyst. They're, I mean, not only just draft picks, but former lottery picks on the move here. So the Memphis Grizzlies send Jaren Jackson to the Utah Jazz alongside Jock Landale, John Conchar, Vince Williams Jr., and the Grizzlies receive Walter Clayton Jr., Taylor Hendricks, George Nang, Kyle Anderson, and 3 future firsts. So what are your impressions of this deal? Is this an overpay? Does this make sense? What does the timeline look like? I mean, do the Jazz, are they still in the DeBonsa sweepstakes? What's going on?
So as far as Utah is concerned, right, a lot of their major players that we're still waiting on to see have been hurt or they've been injured at previous points in the season. We'll see. We already know Walker Kessler's going to be out. We'll see how Jaren Jackson impacts this team's race in the lottery. We know for a fact that this team, regardless of those pieces moving around, this hasn't been a good defensive team this year. They've had some moments where they've really looked like a playoff caliber offense. And in my opinion, they certainly are with, Keontae George and Lauri Markkanen spearheading that attack. But I think this move doesn't necessarily take them out of position to still try and get one of these high value draft picks. I think it's just a really interesting swing to make for next season. You asked me about, Jaren Jackson Jr.'s value and is he the type of player that I would want to go after? I'm not the biggest fan of Jaren Jackson Jr. on a max level contract just at its face. But when this
former
is the
defensive
price,
player of the year,
if Jaren Jackson Jr. is one of your top 2 players on your team, do you feel very confident you can go out and win a championship? Yes or no?
Depends who the number 1 is.
Okay, so that's a good answer. So that's why I'm not necessarily in love with Jaren being paid as one of those max slot guys. But however, if this is the price to go get him, Walt Clayton. Shout out Walt Clayton, one of my favorite non-lottery picks last draft.
You called him Walt.
I did call him Walt Clayton, and 3 future firsts. I actually think this was an incredibly reasonable price for the Jazz to pay. It makes it a worthwhile move to take. And I really think when you think about the Western Conference landscape as a whole, Corey, a lot of these teams are investing in size across every single front court position. So now you're seeing the Jazz take steps forward with Lauri Markkanen, Jaren Jackson, Walker Kessler. You can play Ace Bailey at the 2 if you really want to. All of a sudden, you can throw out these incredibly jumbo lineups to try and compete with the rest of that size in the Western Conference. So this signals to me, Corey, this is the last year that the Utah Jazz seem to be in the quote-unquote tank race for one of these top picks. They want to take a legitimate steps forward next year. And I think this trade's really going to help them do it, because that defensive duo of Jaren Jackson and Walker Kessler is going to give teams a lot of problems while still maintaining that spacing that you would want around someone like Keontae George, who has significantly upped his usage. I think, and cleaning the glass, he rates out as like the 89th or 90th percentile in terms of usage at his position. You want that type of guy to have the space, the freedom to operate inside the arc, get to those pull-up jumpers, let him get downhill, get those fouls, keep that free throw rate up. In order to do that, you need to have the spacing to do that. Then you need to have the defensive personnel around him, right? Like Lauri and Keontae as a duo, they're only plus 0.2 points per 100 possessions per cleaning the glass. The offense is 9.2 points better per 100 with them on the floor, but the defense is 9 points worse with them both on the floor together. So you need more of that personnel. I think Walker Kessler, once he comes back next year, will really help that. Jaren Jackson will certainly help that. There is a lineup that I saw when I was trying to do some Jazz research where you put a similar combination of those 2 players alongside Lauri and Keontae. I forget who the other guys are. I don't have my notes in front of me with that specific deal, but that lineup was like plus 30-something points per 100 possessions when Walker was actually playing this year. So I think they're moving in the right direction. I love what the Jazz did. What do you think about it, Corey?
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I mean, look, I've always loved Keontae. I've always been a believer. It didn't look great the first couple of years, but you got to be patient with these young guards. I still think Keontae has more to unlock. I think that, they're still going to look for a backcourt partner, hopefully one in which can also handle the rock and make plays and, add a little bit of positional size. So I think that Keontae can kind of play off the ball. But if you are going to invest in Keontae and believe in him, you do need size elsewhere, right? And that's what they got. Like you said, now you have 2 guys who are phenomenal defensive front court players in Jaren Jackson, Walker Kessler. I think Jaren Jackson has always played better next to, kind of a big center, right? That's what we saw in Memphis. I love the fit there with Zach in Memphis, but and I don't think Walker Kessler is quite the same player, but nor is, he necessarily representative of a Steven Adams type of guy, but we've seen him be successful next to bigger players. And now he's next to 2 bigger players because Lauri's another 7-footer too, who has proven since, at least Cleveland, that he can play the small forward position. And so now you have a lot of positional versatility in that front court. You can go a ton of different directions. And now your team might start looking a little cleaner going forward. You might have more directions. Who knows? Maybe if they're not out of the sweepstakes, you end up with a Darren Peterson or something. What are we talking about for as far as futures go? They still have a ton of depth. And I think it's interesting. Clearly they feel invested in Kessler, who's going to be, a restricted free agent. But, Shams reported that, I believe it was Shams, reported that they turned down multiple pick offers, like pretty much the same package for another trade that we'll talk about later in the Zubac trade with Indiana. So I think they like the direction they're heading. We'll see how many games that these guys play. They're obviously not shy to shut guys down and try to do what they can to jockey for position. We also know that position matters a little less now with the lottery odds flattening. So you don't necessarily have to be the worst team. Clearly, you want those odds, but we see teams all the time, since they've changed these odds, jump up and move position. So I kind of like what they did. I hope it doesn't affect their draft position. They don't regret it from that perspective. But as far as putting a product on the floor that, might finally be able to compete, because how much longer can Lauri Markkanen just be okay doing this song and dance?
I don't think this happens unless Keontae George took the leap this year.
Yeah,
that he did. Like there's just no way that this. I think the fact that Keontae has been as good of an offensive player that he has, that they've really found some chemistry with him and Lowry working together on the court. I think that gives this franchise real confidence moving forward. That listen, we want to have a bite at the apple of one of the 3 best players in this draft class. But even if we don't get one of those top 3 guys, this draft is loaded with talent throughout the top 10, throughout the lottery. If they get someone like a Kingston Flemings or a Keaton Wagler or another big man or forward in the building, I still think they're going to be very happy with where they are. And again, given the price that they got, that they paid in terms of getting Jaren Jackson, I think that was very reasonable to the point where you don't let those types of opportunities pass you by. You go and get talent when you can get it for the right price. I love what the Jazz are doing. I do think it would be very interesting though, Corey. We're a draft centric core.
Yeah.
The draft is what we talk about every single day. Let's say theoretically they do land one of those top 3 picks. Who is the best fit for this Utah Jazz team? Like, where would you really want to go with one of those 3 picks? Because it's kind of feels like you might be kicking somebody to the curb depending on who it ultimately is, right? Like Darren Peterson would probably be, I think, our first name given how this team is currently constructed. But what are you doing with Ace Bailey? Are you just kicking him to the curb and saying, you know what, we're Keontae, Darren, we can't necessarily pull one of those other 3 front court guys out. If you draft like a Cam or an AJ who align positionally with that front court, are you telling them immediately, like, you have to come off the bench because this is kind of what we invested in, this is what we did? Like, how would you approach that situation if you were the Jazz?
Well, whoever they believe is the best player is who they should take.
Yep.
As simple as that. I mean, and honestly, I know that, AJ has ties considering, played high school his senior year in Utah, playing at BYU. So there's all like the rumors that there's ties there. But if I'm not mistaken, didn't the Jazz hire Carlos Boozer
to scout? They sure did.
So, I mean, I'd assume that would play a little bit of a part. And how can you blame them? I mean, at that point, Cam is I think that from my perspective, Darren and Cam are both guys that you look at and you go, okay, this might change our timeline. It might speed it up. It might allow us to pivot. Who knows? Maybe you move off Lowry, you reroute Jaren, you move Kessler. Like he just gives you options. Mm-hmm. I think that AJ is probably the toughest fit there, as far as there's a little bit of overlap, but whatever, they'll make it work. I mean, AJ could probably play the 2, if you really needed him to. I mean, I don't think
I only ask, Corey, because it's easy for us to be able to sit here and say, well, if you get one of those top 3 picks, you just draft BPA regardless of situation. But there are real human conversations that need to be had with these guys. And
you're of course
someone that they got to take a back seat. Maybe you do have to look at rerouting somebody. Like, these are the things that, we don't necessarily always talk about on podcasts like ours or on social media, whatever the case may be, but there's real conversations that have to be had. And it's just really interesting to think about some of the dynamics and some of the politics in these situations.
Of course, there's agents like, oh, it's too crowded, I don't get my guy out of it, right? There's a ton of stuff you have to deal with. But ultimately, I mean, look, even they get the 4th pick. If they think Caleb is the best guy, take Caleb.
Yeah.
Like the good news is, I like Jaren better as a 4 than, a 5 full time. Mm-hmm. And I also like Caleb better as a 4 and Cam better as a 4 full time, but they can play off of each other.
For sure.
And you'll figure that stuff out. Right now, just get the best assets, get the best players. And I mean, look, I think it's funny. We went from small ball in the league to so many teams are trying to upsize. So the evolution is kind of interesting.
And you also want to be in this position as a franchise rather than not be in this position, right? Like we're talking about this as a problem, but these are great problems to have, Corey.
Yeah, 100%. Incredible problems. Next big trade. I mean, obviously this wasn't the second trade of the week, but I feel like the next blockbuster, which there were certainly rumblings that Anthony Davis could potentially be on the move, was open to being on the move. Obviously, you get Cooper Flag, everything changes. Nico's gone. There's no longer an attachment. you just kind of move on the best way that you can. The Washington Wizards trying to jumbo size that front court as well now, pairing Anthony Davis and Alex Sarr in the front court. Anthony Davis from the Mavericks heading to Washington. The Wizards receive Anthony Davis, Jaden Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, Dante Exum. Mavs get Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, who I believe got rerouted again, Marvin Bagley, 2 future firsts and 3 future seconds. Washington clearly wants to speed up this rebuild, but not so much so that they don't want to be in the mix this year.
Yeah.
They went out and got Trey. They went out and got AD. And they're like, you know what, guys? You know, the Collins, we're good.
We're good, man.
Take a load off. Rest. Take it easy. We're going to keep doing what we're doing this year. Play the young guys. Lose a bunch of games. Hopefully get a top pick. And they could be cooking way sooner than I think people thought, Nathan.
I have my best friend lives in the DMV area, just got done celebrating his bachelor's past weekend with some other DMV guys and talking some Washington Wizards basketball and what this team could potentially be, not knowing that this type of move would be on the horizon. Obviously, we could talk about the Trae Young trade, but also this Anthony Davis blockbuster. I love what the Wizards are doing, Corey. The reason why I love it so much is this team potentially has outs all over the place and they can go whatever direction they see fit. So you bring in Trae Young and Anthony Davis. Those are 2 legitimate all-star caliber talents to help you evaluate the rest of your roster. You bring in a point guard who can man the offense, who can get guys into spots, who can teach guys where they need to be on the court in order to best optimize an offense. You have Anthony Davis, who loves playing alongside another big, which is something that Alex Sarr hasn't had really up to this point in his career with the Wizards. He hasn't necessarily had good size next to him or even good size behind him to really spell him. Like when Alex Sarr is off the floor, that Wizards team, their numbers crater. So not necessarily that they're blowing everyone away, because the Wizards are still like one of the 3 worst teams in the NBA as it stands statistically. But when Sarr isn't on the floor, it gets really, really bad. And there's a reason for that. He's a good player. He's someone who this Wizards front office needs to figure out how to best optimize him, right? Does he need to play alongside another big? Is he in fact best suited to share the court with himself? The only way we're going to find that out is if you put real NBA talent alongside of him to help answer those questions. That's why I love when teams in this position make moves like this, to where you can not only evaluate the rest of the roster, but with someone like Trae, who I guess there's talks that they're going to work on new contracts for both of these guys in the offseason. But let's just say hypothetically, you know, Trae Young picks up his option. He's 1 year left on his deal, right? And he's someone who you could potentially flip again. Yeah. You could flip Anthony Davis in another trade. If you didn't necessarily like how these 2 fit alongside these young core, you could have them help you answer those questions about where your roster sits. And, you know, these are 2 guys who, again, we talk about with health. You know, if things necessarily go sideways and they're not healthy or whatever the case, then they're in the race next year potentially for another lottery pick, right? Like, I think this team can go so many different directions. They can be as competitive as they want, as quick as they want. They can still stay patient. I think all these moves do. It's not necessarily that these are your 2 new all-star faces for the next 5 to 7 years. These are 2 very legitimate building blocks who can help you build in the sense of answering the rest of the questions around your roster, what they need to ultimately develop and contribute to winning. So that's why I really love this move, and really both trades in general for Washington.
Yeah, and they've had so many young guys. I mean, you need good players.
Yep.
Around your young core, or they won't learn how to win.
Yep.
You know, and look, they've now acquired enough good young players alongside potentially, right, their top pick this year, to where you go, okay, like, we can't be bad anymore. Like, we know that obviously, you know, we're seeing a theme with teams kind of going, okay, we can maybe jumpstart our rebuild a little bit. We don't need to be bad for the 2027 NBA draft. Now, we know that, you know, maybe it isn't going to be as hyped as the last 2 drafts, 25, 26, 27. But, wow. breaking news. The Brooklyn Nets are waiving Cam Thomas.
Not what I expected when we saw the news yesterday that he wasn't with the team. Thought there would be a trade in the works, but
yep.
That's news.
Okay.
All right.
That's interesting. We can talk about that in a minute. But, you want Keyshawn George. You want Bub Carrington. You want Trey Johnson, Will Riley, Bilal Coulibaly, your guy. You want Alex Sarr. You want these guys to get used to building positive habits around competent players.
Yep.
And these guys are all guys who play hard, try to do the right thing. You just can't win in the NBA when you're young, and you need veterans around. So, I mean, I think this is cool that what they're doing, especially because it doesn't. You look up, you look at what obviously the Mavericks had to give up last year to get AD, that value, and you're not losing out on anything this year for the draft. I mean, this is like the coolest move, regardless of what you say about his injury history. Like, they get the right guy. Like, they're cooking, man. They're cooking.
It's also just, it gets to the point, Corey, where, again, we're not necessarily the podcast that's talking about the business side of sports, but you also just get to a point where you kind of want to put some butts in seats, right?
Well, sure.
And when you bring in names like Trae Young and Anthony Davis, and you have the young talent that you rattled off, a few young guys in particular, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, I feel like those guys are actually ready to contribute to winning basketball more than people think. And so now all of a sudden you're really starting to build a buzz and an excitement in a really good market for sports. Like DC, like Trae Young talked about it at his press conference, like he talked about in interviews, like this is a city that's ready to take the next step as far as becoming a potential destination for players. The only way you make that type of leap is if you start competing and really trying to win and fostering a culture of competitive spirit rather than just, we're going to keep tearing it down and tearing it down, tearing it. They did that. They did their deconstruction phase. That's quote unquote over now. Let's start to build up. And what better way to do that than with two solidified talents that can help our young guys take the steps in the right direction that they need to. So from a business standpoint as well, I love the fact that they're trying to bring some energy, some excitement to the city and really get fans hopeful that Washington's going in a better direction.
How do you, what do you think about this from the Dallas perspective? I mean, quickly, we can go over now. Databaller here in the replies is showing us the final return for the Luka Doncic trade, including the Anthony Davis flip. Max Christie, Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, Marvin Bagley, 3 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks.
I mean, Corey, we do we really have to do this, man? Do we got to do this to Dallas Mavericks fans?
I mean, look, Dallas Mavericks fans are, I'm sure they're still salty about that. They always will be. But at the end of the day, it's over. You're not getting the girl back. She doesn't want you anymore. She moved across the country, but you got Cooper Flag. You found yourself a new girl, and she's hot and she's super cool, little younger and springier. So, I mean, they still moved AD. They still got a return. I mean, do we like any of these players that they did get in return for AD here?
I mean, you're the AJ Johnson guy, so you're more than welcome to get into that young flyer that they just took. I mean, in terms of the assets, the picks they got back, we won't know until they're ultimately they find a way to utilize them, whether that's using them in another trade or they ultimately make some selections. We'll see as time goes on. But in terms of what they wanted to accomplish by trading Anthony Davis, which was to give them some financial flexibility, some room to operate and build around Cooper Flag for the future, clearly they accomplished that. It obviously wasn't the way that everyone intended when that trade was initially made in the Luka Doncic deal, but they accomplished their goal of, deconstructing and trying to position themselves to build around Cooper Flag. I think the biggest thing for Dallas in the short term is to continue figuring out how to best utilize Cooper Flag, who are the types of players that he needs in order to be successful on the court around him at all times, and then taking some of that data that they're going to gather and that information they're going to get as the rest of the season goes on, go into this lottery, which they are more than projected to be in this year in 2026, and make the right selection within the lottery for this team to move forward. I think this upcoming lottery pick is probably the most important agenda, in my opinion, for the Dallas Mavericks right in front of them.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. Let's talk about the next trade here. I mean, teams chasing relevance to teams trying to win now, right?
Yep.
We have the James Harden for Darius Garland trade. So, I mean, this one was almost straight up. The Cavs get the Cavs give up Darius Garland and a second-round pick, get James Harden. For this year specifically, I kind of like it for both teams. The Clippers, I like it for the future. For this year specifically, I kind of like it for Cleveland. There was something wrong there. Something off about this season, Nate. And say what you want about James Harden, not clutch in the playoffs, all that. Well, you know who is pretty clutch in the playoffs? Spida.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell is not afraid of the moment. I like the positional size this gives him in the backcourt a lot better. James Harden is still an incredible offensive talent, awesome shooter, fantastic passer. Now, I think that there's going to be a lot of pressure on Donovan Mitchell now to be a guy who takes this team to the next level, but the East is still wide open. You know, who knows about Tatum coming back? Even if he does, I don't know what that looks like. Does he disrupt what they got going on? The Knicks are starting to play well again, but we know that, you know, we'll see what that looks like defensively in the playoffs. I think that this gives the Cavs an opportunity to make it out of the East. Obviously, Detroit's there. They're going to be tough, right? But they still have a lot of proof. I mean, they haven't proven anything in the playoffs yet. I don't think this is their year, but certainly they have a chance. I really think this gives Cleveland a real opportunity to come out of the East now.
I mean, they should have already had that opportunity with Darius Garland, you know, manning the
controls. They should have, but now, he was not having a great year.
Now, there's plenty of speculation about which boy, Corey, bringing this topic up for us, you're really getting us into our sports talk show bag, you know, having this type of conversation here. But there was speculation that, you know, Darius and Spida weren't necessarily meshing well enough in the backcourt, and you know, what would that mean for this team's outlook in the playoffs? And is that the thing that was really mucking up everything for this team on both sides of the ball? Well, now you bring in James. James is even more ball dominant than Darius Garland. So how's that relationship going to work out in terms of sharing those on-ball touches with Donovan Mitchell? You're kind of having Donovan focus a lot more on the scoring side of things and necessarily making everyone else around him better. But in terms of what James Harden can do for an offense, of course he can help better optimize some of these players and do as good of a job or arguably better, especially with, you know, lob catchers like Jared Allen, you know, rollers like Evan Mobley. He's awesome at spraying the ball out and finding shooters. We've seen Jalen Tyson have an incredible year for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Shout out to one of my favorite NBA sophomores. So obviously having someone like that in your lineup can help you maximize whatever's there to be had on the offensive side of the ball. But what's going to happen in the playoffs on the defensive side of the ball, right? So what are some of those lineups going to look like? How often do you have to stagger, you know, Donovan Mitchell and James Harden to make sure that you have some of the other guys around them to better optimize their defense? You know, we could talk about the double bigs and what they can potentially do for a defense, but I'm just very curious in how a lot of those lineups are going to have to be constructed in order to win some of these games in the playoffs, because it's not just offense. Defense matters when you get into May and June. And what are those lineups going to look like? How is James Harden going to help this team? But potentially, how does he also hurt this team maybe as much or maybe even a little bit more on the defensive end of the floor as Darius Garland? So I'll be very curious to see, you know, how this team starts playing and meshing over the next, you know, few weeks to the next month.
I think this gives them more defensive flexibility, especially after getting Keon Ellis, because playing Garland, Mitchell, Keon Ellis all together at the same time makes your team really small. Now, obviously, you know, a healthy Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, you could pull it off, right? But now, like, James Harden's always been better at guarding physical guys, like the bigger physical guys, maybe guys who are threes. You could put him at the 3 on defense. You could still let him run stuff. Keon Ellis doesn't need the rock, right? You're not letting him create. So if you're running Keon Ellis, Harden, Donovan Mitchell, you could still have somebody who can guard quicker, stronger, backcourt guys, whatever, quicker backcourt guys. Let James Harden potentially take, a wing, or you have the flexibility to kind of put him on whoever the weak link is in a lineup. Obviously, that gets harder the deeper you go in a playoff series. And then the other thing is just he's an Iron Man. He doesn't miss games.
He is an Iron Man, yep.
And so he's at least somebody you can rely on there. So I kind of like it, and, some of the other moves that they made that, also getting Schroeder. So, they have a ton of backcourt options, backcourt depth, depending on the situations. They need a healthy front court to make this thing go, but I think it gives them flexibility. Now, what does this mean in the long term? I don't know. We know that James Harden doesn't stay happy very long in most places. Joakim Noah once had famous words about the city of Cleveland and how enjoyable it is. So we'll see how long this lasts. But from a strictly this year perspective, I like it. I'm a little confused about what the Clippers are doing overall, what direction they're ultimately going in. After trading Zubac.
Great segue to the next big trade. Great segue.
Yeah. I like getting Garland. He's a lot younger. I still believe in him. He's having an off year. You're putting him in a situation now. He doesn't have to be in the backcourt with another like small guard necessarily. But, and they probably were under the impression they might not be competing for a title this year, even though they're getting an incredible Kawhi year.
Yeah.
But yeah, ultimately, the Zubac trade threw me off a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I was a little perplexed. They got assets for him, right? You can't say that they didn't get their money's worth, but yeah, I was a little thrown by that, Nate.
Yeah, I think it caught me off guard a little bit as well. But if they feel like they got the most return or one of the better returns that they could have gotten, and that's why they were motivated to make this trade now versus waiting on doing something like this, then it can make sense. We'll have to see how the return ultimately pans out for them. Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, 2 guys who have had up and down careers so far in Indiana. They've had their bright spots, but they've also had times where, they've both been hurt or they haven't necessarily been on the court in some of those higher leverage moments. So in terms of immediate short term, what does it mean for the Clippers this season? I think that remains to be seen, but hats off to Indiana for getting aggressive and making this type of move, even when they're nowhere near the playoff race right now in the East. They're projected to have a really nice pick in this upcoming 2026 NBA draft. You'll add another blue chip talent. You'll have Tyrese Halliburton coming back. You still have guys like Nesmith and Pascal Siakam and Andrew Nembhard. Now you add a better defensive center, in my opinion, than what Miles Turner was for you in Ivica Zubac. He's not the shooter that Miles Turner was, but I think this team needs defensive support more than anything. Tyrese Halliburton, he is the ultimate straw that stirs the drink. He will make anything work for you offensively with him manning the controls. Nembhard's a great secondary ball handler. Pascal Siakam, an all-star, all-NBA caliber player still, moving forward. So I'm not worried about the offense. This team has always needed more defensive support. They found a lot of defensive success last year in the playoffs, probably getting, more than they thought that they could out of that team defensively. But ultimately, when you could add an all defense level stalwart in someone like Zubac for the price that they paid, which I don't think was a steep price whatsoever. I think it was a very reasonable price. I'd say Indiana definitely got the best of that trade for sure. We'll see what it means for the Clippers side of things, but I love what Indiana did, Corey.
And let's not get it twisted. He's a good offensive player.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
He just doesn't space the floor.
Right.
But he is going to be a good cog in that offense. The pick and roll game that he offers teams is fantastic. He's not like a Jokic or a Nurkic level playmaker by any stretch, but he's got enough feel that he's going to keep the offensive humming. I mean, Carlisle is, I think he'll do great in that kind of offense. And
the other thing about him too, offensively, Corey, it's not even just the play finishing or the scoring; it's the screen setting. He's such a good screen setter at the top. You know, guys like Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard, they need that screen in order to free up that guy to dribble into that 3-point shot. If it's Tyrese or Andrew Nembhard loves getting into that 2-dribble mid-range pull-up, like you need great screeners in order to do that. This team hasn't had that since Turner went to the Bucks, and Zubac is a 2 or 3 times better screen setter than even Turner was for that team. So that's just great offensive optimization for that lineup in general.
And he's averaging 3.5 offensive rebounds a game over the last 2 seasons. So he's going to get you more possessions.
Yep.
So, I mean, from a fit perspective, it's phenomenal. I mean, Indiana is setting themselves up next year, and they still have moves that they can make on the margins if they want depth in other spots, right? So, I mean, they're in a great spot to get right back as long as Tyrese Halliburton comes back healthy. You know, they land the right draft pick, they're going to be right back in the contending status in the East. So I love it for them. Again, I'm just a little confused from the Clippers perspective, because now it seems almost like they're going in multiple directions. So yeah,
I mean, clearly they don't believe that this core was going to be this core past the year 2027. So this is kind of an early teardown. It seems that James Harden got wind of that, or could quote unquote feel that in the air, which is why that trade happened. And given the circumstances, this front office probably felt like this was a great time to get value out of Ivica Zubac. Now Kawhi Leonard is the last of that quote unquote big three left on the roster, and we'll see if maybe he's another major blockbuster domino to fall this coming summer, along with another big name who didn't ultimately get moved to this deadline. So it could be the race for wings and forwards in this upcoming summer, and we'll see what the future holds for the Clippers. But in terms of their immediate outlook this season, it's definitely not going the direction of the playoffs unless Benedict Matherin's ready to take some superstar leap that we're not expecting.
Well, he'll be willing to try.
He will be willing to try. That's right.
Thank you, everybody rocking with us right now, both on YouTube and over on Twitter. Make sure that you're hitting like, subscribe, share, retweet, all that good stuff. Nate, now let's talk. The two timelines has officially been taken out back and put down. Kristaps Porzingis on the move, traded for Jonathan Kuminga alongside Buddy Hield, headed to Atlanta. So we're done with this saga finally. Yep, Kuminga can move on. How are we feeling about this fit in Atlanta for Kuminga?
This to me is the weirdest trade that we've gotten so far. So
I think it makes a ton of sense for Golden State.
Does it make a ton of sense for Golden State? So, well, okay. Kristaps Porzingis healthy, most optimized makes sense for this Golden State lineup.
Yes.
We don't know if he's going to be healthy though.
No.
We also know that Jimmy Butler's out for the rest of the season.
But we did know that Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield were not going to help them this year.
Would they have been better support if you're not going to get games from Kristaps Porzingis? Like if Kristaps ultimately cannot come back in a healthy sense, and now they're down him, they're down what could have been with Kuminga. Buddy Hield hasn't been like an all-star for the Warriors this season, but Buddy Hield's been a pretty solid contributor since he's been there in Golden State. So I think it's a major bet on what Kristaps can give them this season. I have no idea what an extension would look like past this season. So listen, if it all works out, if he's able to make Steph make another playoff push this year, they play some exciting basketball, that's fantastic. And I understand that Kuminga wasn't going to be on that team past this season in any universe. So I suppose if that's the glass half full way you want to look at it, perfectly fine, perfectly happy to do that with you. But I also have to realistically look at things that if he's not playing those games, what does that mean for Golden State? Did they potentially get even further away from making noise? in the playoffs this year. I think the Atlanta fit with Kuminga in particular is also really interesting alongside someone like a Jalen Johnson. If they're going to buy into Kuminga and extend him past this season, they're going to give him a brand new contract. You have him and Jalen Johnson. That's kind of like your optimized front court of the future. They're also going to have a really high draft pick in this upcoming draft. So what does that mean for the direction that they want to go? Is it Darren Peterson or bust now with the Atlanta Hawks? Are they maybe, is there a little bit of hope within that fan base that they slide, they can get another point guard like a Kingston Fleming, someone like that? Like, I'm really curious to see how that's going to impact what they do in this upcoming draft between that Kuminga and Jalen Johnson pair. I don't know, just a very weird trade out of left field that I certainly wasn't expecting.
I wasn't expecting it. I don't particularly love the fit. It also makes things weird for Richeche now, who, I thought had a pretty solid rookie season. He hasn't made any improvements to his game. But if anything, I guess, his free throw percentage is down nearly 10 points. But still an NBA wing, not the number one pick, we know, or worth the number one pick in most drafts, we know. Still an NBA wing. But he seems like a guy in particular who's just like very confidence reliant. When he's not feeling like the kind of player who typically should feel like a number one pick, it seems like he just doesn't. He could disappear. Now having his, kind of, I don't know, replacement in Kuminga. I mean, Kuminga's not going to struggle with confidence. He's going to go there and he's going to think he's forming a dynamic duo. But even then, I mean,
I don't know what this team is, Corey.
I don't know
what the Hawks are. Like,
I guess they don't need to know because they're going to get, a top pick potentially. And look, they might think Cam is the guy. And then they just go, all right, well, we'll move off Kuminga. I mean, maybe Kuminga balls out. Maybe they're just like, you know what? We're going to give him the rock, let him ball out. Hopefully he shows that the Warriors were idiots and we're underutilizing him. And if that's the case, then they can either keep him and have a piece, or they can sell higher than the Warriors got to.
For whatever reason, this front office doesn't have the belief in Onyeka Okongwu that they probably should have.
He's fine.
Dyson Daniels' shooting is in the toilet this season.
It's a tough look.
Major regression. They traded away Trae Young, so all of a sudden there's a hole at point guard that needs to be patched up past just Nickeil Alexander-Walker being your starting point guard.
He's not a point guard.
You talked about Richeche's struggles and how he's failed to take some meaningful steps forward in his sophomore season. So there are some real questions on this roster, and Jalen Johnson's on arguably the best contract in terms of value in the NBA right there with Deni Avdija in Portland. So that's a major plus for this Atlanta front office. We talk about their upcoming high lottery pick, which could certainly land inside the top 3, top 4. You could get another blue chipper, but I just don't. Before this season, Corey, there was so much buzz and optimism in Atlanta. I drank the Kool-Aid. I guess I listened to too much Zach Lowe. I drank too much of the Zach Lowe Atlanta Hawks Kool-Aid, but
Zach Lowe's fantastic.
I really thought this was going to be a team that could compete for a top 3, top 4 seed in the East. And now all of a sudden, I don't know where they land in the East. I don't know what their path forward is. I guess this draft's going to mean a lot for them, and we'll see how Kuminga plays a part in it. He's going to love playing a lot of minutes. He's going to get a lot of touches. I think him and Jalen Johnson, there are aspects of that tandem that can work. I mean, Kuminga loves playing an up and down style. Jalen Johnson's been an incredible passer. He'll be able to hit him in transition. I think there's aspects of their games that can work, but this team's going to have to find some more shooting somewhere. I don't know where they're going to get it this season.
That's the thing. Because ultimately it's just, I don't know, a worse version of Paulo and Franz.
That's a great one, actually.
Right?
That's a great one. Yeah.
And look, you ultimately need to, if you're building around Jalen Johnson, and Jalen Johnson is, someone who's nearly averaging a triple-double, right? Like, this is somebody worth building
Spectacular.
Around.
Yep.
You need to just optimize him and make sure that all of your surrounding pieces are great shooters. But the problem is that you need, in this modern NBA, you can't just have shooters around them. These guys need to be multifaceted shooters. And, that's becoming easier said than done because the league is just too talented. And you can get stuck with these guys who give you production and it makes you mediocre. And this is the kind of move that I think does that. I know that all the health stuff, to me, I guess that the Porzingis thing is a ticking time bomb and he's unreliable and he's not going to be there long term. So I get that you're looking for a long-term piece possibly, but I don't know. Even if Kuminga goes off, do you want to pay him and have that take up a chunk of your cap going forward? He's almost a stay away for a team like this.
Yeah, this whole thing is. I don't know what to do with this trade. In all honesty, if there was one trade where I could say, give me some more time to marinate on it and really let me dive into the film and study some of the numbers and think about it a little more, this would be the one, because I don't know what I know it can do for Golden State. We know what it can do for them. I don't know what the heck it does for Atlanta.
Yeah. I kind of like it for Golden State just on the off chance that Porzingis can be healthy consistently. I think, he gives them some kind of more interesting option than that duo did. Totally understand the, why it might not work out for sure. But yeah, it's a little confusing. Talk about some moves that I didn't find confusing. The Bulls finally moving on, baby. Rebuild time.
Quite
See you
literally
later,
rebuild
everybody.
Time. Yeah.
End of an era.
Shout out to you for starting that trend, by the way.
Yeah.
End of an era. Yeah.
This is the most excited that I have been to watch the Bulls. And I feel like it's been because I've been out on the Bulls. I've disengaged. There's no reason. They had no reason to watch. You're playing.
You didn't love the Dalen Terry and Julian Phillips minutes for the Bulls? And
I can't say it was my favorite. My favorite? Yeah, I can't say that. But ultimately, they were rudderless. Okay, Modest is cool, I guess. I mean, Josh Giddey, I like more than most, it seems like, probably. I like Kobe's always been a good soldier out there, plays hard, but Vooch, you could do worse, I guess. Seemed like he was going to stay forever. I can't believe they even were able to move off of him. But something finally clicked. You got to lose. You got to get high-level players. Now, do I trust them in the draft? Not as far as I can throw them. Not even a little bit. You tell me what pick they end up at, I could tell you the player that they'll reach for. They're going to, they love their 6'8", 6'9" forwards, which is why I'm so shocked that they moved off of Ousmane Dieng. I thought that they might try to use a rehabilitation strategy there, but I kind of like, people will crush them and kill them for not getting first round picks back. Right. And there's a few things. For one, I think that teams are getting a little more hip to not giving out first round picks to players that are not worth it as much. They're a little bit more protective of first round picks. And secondly, their strategy in that case, to me, is kind of smart. Why don't we scout, not just for the draft, but for the second draft, and see if we can get players who have been either in bad situations or had a rough start. And let's see if we can rehabilitate their value and fix some second draft guys. I mean, you look at their hauls that they've went and got, right? Rob Dillingham today. Leonard Miller, for a lot of people, second draft guys. Jaden Ivey. I mean, they went and traded last year for Isaac Okoro. Even Giddey, Anthony Simon.
Leonard Miller.
I said Leonard Miller. I mean, look, I was never a big Leonard Miller fan. I know you liked him a little bit more. The calculator crew we're gonna find out, I think.
Here's the thing though. I'm so glad you're very optimistic about this. I really am. I agree with you about the second draft point and trying to take some calculated swings on players who, if you put them in another situation, what can you get out of them? How can you help develop them to become the versions of themselves that we thought they could be before the draft? Is it a good strategy to make like 6 of those moves at one deadline? Are you going to actually be able to properly evaluate these guys when you're making so many different moves across the board to where you're throwing out these lineups that aren't going to have a chance to defend or rebound the basketball at a high level?
Correct.
So how much are we going to actually learn about some of these guys? Like again, I agree with that premise on its face, but when you make so many of these moves at one time, are we actually going to get what we want out of the experiment other than, trying to plummet down the standings and maybe land a high pick in this draft? Or is that all you care about as a Bulls fan?
That's all you should care about.
All right.
It's been too long since that's what they've cared about. Who needs 38 and 44 or whatever, the math heads up to? Like, just be bad. And if some of these guys actually end up showing that they have some stuff, you can toy with the roster and insulate them in certain ways. And you'll figure that out later. So to me, okay, if Leonard Miller or Nick Richards are your bigs now, Yabusele, right? If these are your bigs, Jalen Smith, okay, your defense is going to suck. Terrific. You don't win games with bad, with bad defense. They shouldn't be worried about winning games. They've been too worried about winning games with rosters that weren't capable of it. They haven't been capable of winning games since the 35 game stretch in 2021 or whatever, 2022, whatever it was, when they signed Lonzo and DeMar, and they had this amazing run when Lonzo was healthy. That was the last time they were watchable, and they should have considered winning games. They should have been trying to lose games since then. So this is the first time that I go, okay, great. They're finally trying to lose some games. I mean, look, does it make sense? Of course not. What are you're going to roll out a lineup of Anthony Simons, Colin Sexton, Rob Dillingham, Trey Jones, and add another guard to the mix?
Billy Donovan might. He sure might.
I would love to see it. Jaden Ivey. That's your 5. Hell yeah. Because it's going to be terrible, but at least it'll be entertaining, fun to watch. You can actually see if there's anything there with these guys, and maybe there's not.
That's my point, is I don't think we're going to find out if there's anything there with some of these guys. I think because there was so much upheaval in one fell swoop, I think the only mission, which to your point should be the mission, to aim for a high draft pick in an incredible draft,
but you
should 1,000% be the right.
You could see what you had in the Wizards, guys. You could see that Keyshawn George, Trey Johnson, sometimes Bub, like you could see that these guys have stuff to them. And then you go, all right, it might not lead to winning today, but we can figure it out going forward. And at the end of the day, at least offensively, it'll still be organized. Billy Donovan is a good coach. Sure. Josh Giddey is a good point guard. Like, their offense will be watchable. They'll probably score a lot.
They will score a lot, and they will give up a lot.
And they're going to have to figure that part out. Yep. They're really going to have to figure that part out, but they don't have to figure that part out right now.
No.
I mean, look, Caleb Wilson is this front office's wet dream prospect. Like, yeah, let's just say it. Like, They love long, rangy wings with questionable jump shots and raw athleticism. And this
Stop giving away all the No Ceilings Plus content for free, Corey. These are the conversations we have in our mock draft meetings.
So, hopefully, they're in a position. They might be too far out now. They would have to have some lottery luck potentially to move up into, the top 3 group, the top 2. But, to me, that they probably have their eye on somebody like that. He won't do it year 1, probably even year 2, but he'll help the defense long term. And then you build around it. It's fine. I kind of like what they're doing. But speaking of this team and the pieces they gave away, what does he do for Boston?
I mean, Vooch gives them legitimate reliable backup depth at the center position, right? Like they really have found something in Neemias Queta in the minutes that he's given them, which shout out to Queta. He's kind of always been an undervalued player. He was for a few seasons in Sacramento and has finally gotten his shot with Boston. He's become a really valuable starting level contributor. But with Vooch, he gives them a legitimate backup to where you don't have to be left scrambling for minutes at the center position. You don't have to play some of these really funky small ball lineups to try and get by. Now you have size for a full 48 minutes as long as everyone's healthy. Between Queta, Vucevic, Luka Garza can give them some spot up, 6 to 8 minutes at that position as well. So now you're kind of covered at the side with size on the court the entire length of the game, which will be important for a team that has been better than a lot of people expected. Boston is firmly in the mix, top 3 seed right now in the Eastern Conference. I don't expect them to be trailing behind too many teams still when all's said and done. I didn't project them to be this good this year, but I also didn't expect them to be bad. I thought they would be a top 6 seed or top 7 seed in the Eastern Conference because that foundation of Jaylen Brown, Derek White, those two together are so good. They've been so good this year. And now you just give them meaningful depth at a position of need to where if Jason Tatum comes back, no one's going to want to play the Celtics in the playoffs.
No.
Like, this is a team, I don't think it's crazy to say they can make the finals. I really don't think it's crazy to say that.
If Tatum comes back healthy.
Yeah. Or healthy enough. Like, if
Healthy
Tatum's
enough.
like 70, 80%.
He doesn't have to be where he's not re-injuring himself.
Right.
Missing games because he's, I agree. Yeah, they play an incredible brand of basketball. A lot of their core has been together long enough that they have chemistry. And look, Vooch, for all of his defensive shortcomings, he has been the Iron Man cog on that Bulls team, of which have had very strong defensive teams throughout his tenure. Now, he's not the reason for that.
Sure.
But he isn't necessarily going to be the piece that is going to crater your defense, especially if he is playing a more limited role than he was in Chicago. And offensively, I mean, he's going to be phenomenal there. He could do a lot of the same Al Horford-y type things that, they might feel like they miss. Even some of the Porzingis type things that, they miss. He's not quite the same level of shooter, but you have to guard him out there.
You do. And to your point about, what value can he give you on both ends of the floor, keep in mind that Boston plays such a switch heavy scheme to where they have the guys they can call out pre-switches. They can make sure that they avoid Vooch from being targeted consistently every trip down the floor. So you're putting him in a much better position to defend at the basket versus away from the basket. And he still has awesome size. He's strong as a bull. Like, he'll do his job around the basket, to your point, and what he's done defensively, in his time in Chicago and even before that. So, I think Boston was probably one of the best spots that he could have ended up. I think there were reports that Boston was interested in him, a few years ago, like well before he even got moved to his prior destination, Chicago. So I think this trade I think it makes a lot of sense just based on what he can give them, but also what they can give him.
Yeah, I think it was a good move for them. As a Sixers guy, Nate,
I knew this was coming.
Well, of course,
I knew it was coming.
We're not going to talk about it.
I knew it was coming.
You want to intro it in?
Yeah. Shout out to my guy Jared McCain, who had an awesome, what was a rookie stretch before he unfortunately got injured. Came back this year. Hasn't necessarily been himself, but I think of late has been playing much better basketball. And given that we haven't seen any follow-up moves from the 76ers other than another salary dump of Eric Gordon, it seems like that's all this was a salary dump. They got some picks back. I believe they got a first-round pick this year from the Houston Rockets and 3 future second-round picks for Jared McCain. And Corey, I feel like this is deja vu because I feel like we literally watched the Sixers give away Isaiah Joe and the Thunder signed him. and he actually played really meaningful basketball in different playoff stretches, helped that team contribute towards winning a championship. Are we seeing the same exact thing happen with Jared McCain, who seems like he has the attitude, the charisma that fits incredibly well, almost eerily a little too perfectly with this Oklahoma City Thunder organization and team? Is he going to have some playoff stretches to where Philly's looking back and going, gosh darn it, we had this guy in our building. I know what they're trying to do in terms of converting some guys off of two-way contracts, making sure they have the rest of the roster solidified, particularly
You're a big Barlow guy.
I am a big Barlow guy. I get what the objective was, but did the casualty have to be someone like a Jared McCain? That's the question.
People last year during his rookie year before he got injured, now small sample, were basically like, would he be the number one pick in a redraft?
Yeah.
Is he
was playing incredible?
Is he a Curry variant?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you come back from an injury, it gets tough. Obviously for Oklahoma City, this is an incredible. If it's a gamble because of health, and they can afford these kind of gambles, these kind of risks. We were begging that they get more outside shooting. They've certainly done that. They have the size, the defense to insulate him. I mean, from their perspective, this is an easy move, right? You're getting a top 10 level talent for, I'm not quite sure which pick is going to Philly.
It's Houston's first round.
I know, but I'm trying to look at Tankathon, and I can't figure this out.
It's going to be somewhere in the mid to late 20s, most likely. So,
and right now it's at 24, I think. So maybe the Sixers are thinking, all right, let's try to convert these guys. We can kind of recoup maybe spend this capital at a position of need. Now we know Maxey and VJ are our future in the backcourt. Both guys are a little smaller than you would want to add a third small guy to the mix. So I get it.
It feels like buyer's remorse is kind of what it feels like. Like they drafted Jaren McCain. He was off to a great start, came back from the injury, wasn't quite himself, playing better of late, like I said, but it feels like maybe they didn't love the player they ultimately got. And it feels like they're trying to trade him in now, and maybe they'll find another answer in this upcoming draft. I really thought that making this move to get that draft capital, they'd reroute it and bring someone different in.
Yeah.
Because Jared McCain was playing backup point guard for this team. So I guess my follow-up question to you is, I watch enough of the Sixers. I know what the numbers are saying of late, to where VJ Edgecombe has really been a much better passer from the beginning of the season up until now. A lot of his numbers, pick and roll numbers, assist turnover, a lot of those statistics are up across the board. Given that this team is on a very real playoff trajectory, looking to compete deeper into the postseason, do you trust VJ Edgecombe manning some of those backup point guard minutes? Because I don't know if there's another answer walking through that door.
No, I don't.
Okay, well,
not in a playoff setting.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the risk they're taking. I think they've probably seen some of the same internal development from VJ and how much better he's been with the ball in his hands of late. I'd argue that while some of the pick and roll numbers are certainly trending in the right direction, I think a lot of his best passing games are when he's making some of those secondary reads, when he's able to work off of a handoff, or he cuts off the ball, catches it, and he's able to reroute it, make that nice, easy pass to pick up that assist, versus really having to dissect the defense in high leverage moments, working off of those ball screens and having to be that real backup decision maker. I think that's going to be a real weak spot for this team now.
They're real thin
if they don't find another answer.
They're real thin in that.
Yeah.
In that backcourt,
because Eric Gordon was the other salary dump. And I know that Eric Gordon's not a pick and roll maestro at this point in his career either, but I mean, you can still give him the ball and trust him that he's going to know what to do with it. So
Kyle Lowry doesn't have a lot left in the tank.
Kyle Lowry might be going to Amazon by the time we get to the playoffs. We don't know, but
I mean, yeah,
it's a concern, man.
unless you feel good with Quentin Grimes having an uptick in minutes and doing some of that playmaking, which is not your worst option.
No, that's the only other option. So I hope VJ is ready for the bright lights.
Andre Drummond playmaking.
Listen, Andre Drummond's trying to knock down those corner threes. He's got one tough assignment already on his plate. Don't give him more homework to try and tackle.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because just overall, it's a team that doesn't have I feel like a ton of depth. Like they're an injury away in that backcourt from things getting pretty tough,
really dicey. Not just injury, but foul trouble during a playoff game. Like teams will look. They'll look to hunt and target Maxey in playoff situations. If they get him in foul trouble, all of a sudden things can get real dicey. And this Sixers defense isn't exactly one of the best in the NBA. All of a sudden they get on a run where it's like 10, 15, 20 points down. Those games can get ugly and out of hand really quick. And I just don't know if the rest of the answers are on that roster.
Well, it certainly doesn't help with the Paul George situation too, who can answer a lot of these questions.
Prescription P, we're going there too. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good nickname. I like that one. Well, he'll be back.
He will be.
He'll be back. So he'll answer some of it. Kobe White goes to Charlotte.
Love that move.
Okay. Tell me why. Sell me on it.
Love that move. Look at where Charlotte's heading right now. They've won 7 games in a row. This team is
their offense is unbelievable.
The offense has been unbelievable. That LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Con Knipple core is plus feels like 1,000 points per 100 possessions when they share the court together. So now you give this team a very real sixth man who can go off for 30 to 35 points any given night in his own right. A better option, in my opinion, than someone like a Colin Sexton. The Charlotte Hornets are doing everything that they should be doing. This is a team that's trying to compete to win now, get in the play-in race, make things interesting, maybe even make the postseason. There's enough young talent on this roster. I don't think this team needed to go the other direction, try and get another lottery pick, waste another season. There's enough talent to cook here. And going out and getting someone like a Kobe White to help them make that push now, solidifying the roster, solidifying that offense, turning a strength into an even bigger strength. I love it, Corey. I love what they did here.
Yeah. I do wish that, like, if let's say that they were going for a playoff run, which it seems like they are, because at the very least they'll be in the play-in tournament. And I think they have the kind of explosive offense that could very easily come out of that play-in tournament. I wish that they went and got a big man. Now, Diabate has been fantastic. Kalkbrenner has showed promise, but has not been particularly impactful defensively, at the very least. So those are two guys who are still young. I mean, Diabate has been in the league for a few years, but this is really his breakout.
Sure. Yeah.
And none of these guys are really, look, it's not imperative that they did it. They don't need to rush it too much, but I would have liked to see and still want to see them target an impact big, maybe in free agency, something going forward. Ultimately, Kobe's going to be great there, right? He's going back to the Carolinas, where I think he was, if he isn't still, was the all-time leading scorer in high school, played it in UNC. So he's got a homecoming of sorts. So it's going to be fun.
Would have you wanted them to go after Ivica Zubac? Do you think those timelines could have potentially, meshed together? And I would have loved that too, man. I would have loved it.
That would have been interesting because he would have been. The chemistry that you get with the the pick and roll stuff between them, the pick and roll stuff with LaMelo, even Brandon Miller.
Those double drag sets with Ivica and Khan. Setting some of those screens, and we've seen the success with Khan as a ghost screener. Yeah, man. The
Spain actions that they run, they could run. That would have been a ton of fun. Nathan, I think those were the biggest moves. I guess we could touch on Ayo DeSumo. We didn't mention him going to the Wolves. We'll see what happens with Conley. He's now eligible to sign back with the Wolves if need be. I think that'll be big for them. I like Ayo. if it's Io and Mike Conley, I can get on board, with that move. If it's just Io, Io's not exactly, I think, the kind of point guard that they needed. So we could talk about that or any other kind of micro moves before we kind of get out of here. So between that and anything else you want to touch on?
No, the Io move was the last real young player storyline that I would have wanted to hit on in particular. I do think that's a great trade that Minnesota made. That's the type of trade that can really help you win on the margins. You need as many of those projectable 3-and-D guys as you can possibly get within your rotation. I know there's some people who would question the defensive side of that, but I think Io can guard both backcourt positions. I don't necessarily think he's a big target in the playoffs or as much of a target as some other people. And then we've seen him really break out as a shooter, especially this season. So I think that's the type of player who you want coming off the bench. I agree with you. He doesn't necessarily answer the point guard question for them. So they're definitely going to need those minutes from hopefully Mike Conley coming back, Dante DiVincenzo. So we'll see how the point guard position shakes out for them. But, they clearly felt that Rob Dillingham wasn't helping them answer those questions. So if we're not going to get an answer for the position, then why not still use what we have to go out and get someone else who can help us at a different spot? I think Io can do that for Minnesota, both the rest of this regular season and in the playoffs. And I will just say about Minnesota in general, we didn't touch on the biggest elephant in the room in Giannis or even John Morant, those two guys not getting
the moves
traded,
that were not made.
I'm glad that Minnesota didn't shake things up in a major way, because I think if they had engaged in a trade like Giannis, for example, it would have been Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and a bunch of other stuff going out the door. And you get to the point where it's awesome to have Ant-Man and Giannis on the same team, but you just kill your depth at all these other positions to where, do you have enough around you to actually go and win a championship? I think it was right for that franchise to not, sell off everything and try to get Giannis. And I think it was good for this team to stand pat, because Minnesota is still very capable of making a deep run, as we've seen over the last few years, and still even get into a finals. So don't doubt Anthony Edwards, and don't doubt the current personnel that they have. I like that they stood pat. Io was a nice move on the margins for them.
Yeah, he's a great depth piece. As much as I still think Rob is an NBA player, he's certainly not helping a team that's ready to win. And Io can potentially do that. We'll see. He's fits clean. I think I was more, based on, our impression of our group chat. I think I would have been more into a Giannis pairing potentially than you would have, but there's no reason to rush it.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee wasn't willing to move off of him yet because the offers weren't there. So, it seems like future problems for everybody. Is it going to move the needle the same way some of these other moves will for teams? Probably not. But they are, one of the top teams in the West. Loaded conference. It's going to be really hard. I mean, look, they're a game out of the behind the 3 seed. 3 games behind the 2 seed. This is a team who very well, like you said, can make another trip to the Western Conference Finals. And once Anthony Edwards gets there, he can match any player in the league.
Yep.
Anyone, over the course of a series. So the NBA got a lot more fun, in my opinion. This deadline was one of the craziest deadlines I can remember in quite some time, Nate. And it didn't even happen all at the deadline. It happened over a flurry of trades in the days previous. But the player movement here, wild. And I think a lot of these teams who are speeding up their rebuild, it signals the confidence that teams have in the 2027 class, which not as much as they've had in the last 2 years.
Isn't it crazy that those 2 of those Utah firsts to get Jaren Jackson were also in 2027? It's just like that. That's just nasty work by Austin Ainge and that front office. It's just nasty work, man. I still can't believe they pulled that off.
Yeah. And look, we know every year players emerge. Look, if Tyron Stokes is on top of his game, he is unbelievably talented. I love Jordan Smith. There's a lot of talented guys, right? We've just been spoiled the last couple of years. But the fact that teams are signaling that they don't value those picks as highly is certainly noteworthy, at the very least. So, Nathan Grubel of No Ceilings NBA, tell the people where they can find you on the World Wide Web.
You can always follow me on X/Twitter at DraftDeeper, and you can look for all of my work to be published at NoCeilingsNBA.com as always. And you can find me on the wonderful podcast feed that we have with Locked On, the Locked On NBA Draft with No Ceilings podcast. I'll be back podcasting with Maxwell next week.
Thank you for joining me, Nate. My name is Corey Tulba. You can find me at Corey Tulba. You can find all of the collective No Ceilings family's work at NoCeilingsNBA.com. Follow us at No Ceilings NBA on socials. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, share if you're here rocking with us. We got live streams going like almost every day. I mean, written work every day, podcasts every day, videos, breakdowns.
Corey, our team is killing it this year, man. Like, legitimately. I can't believe all the work that we're putting out consistently this year.
I can't either. Insane. I mean, look, we're putting out so much work. We've added to our graphics department, and still somehow, between splitting up the work between Rucker, myself, and the graphics crew, I still get overwhelmed with all the graphics I got to create for all the work that we're doing. It's unbelievable. And the only reason that we get to do so much of this work is because,
because the fans, baby.
Our fans are unbelievable. So thank you all for giving us those opportunities. But stay locked in, man. Thank you for rocking with us. And, your boys are out. Peace.